going back to Daschle, who the Senate minority leader, who lost election after he'd been called virtually as having given aid and comfort to the enemy. That's the narrow definition in the Constitution, and there's a reason why it's so narrow, by the way. The reason is that this country was founded by traitors. Every one of them a loyal subject of King George III in 1774 and a traitor in 75 and 76. When Benjamin Franklin said we hang together or we hang separately, he wasn't just using a metaphor at that point. But these are people who found in themselves a loyalty to a different concept of government and a different form of government, which, until recently at least, we have enjoyed ever since in some form. One of the most striking comments that I've heard in this conference was by Ralph Raico the other day, who said, "It's amazing how each new president makes you nostalgic for the last one." And I was asking about that today, and he went further. He said, "Who would have ever dreamed that we would be looking back with fondness on Janet Reno?" And I went, sort of, what am I hearing? I didn't want to be asked to feel fondness for Janet Reno. And then he said, I said, "You're really testing me on that one." And he said, Waco, he said, well, Ashcroft, Gonzalez. Got a point there. Guess I'll have to reevaluate Janet Reno. A question does arise, when did this rot set in? This steady erosion, it seems like. So we've heard different candidates here now, Franklin Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, just this morning, Lincoln. And of course, my friend Karen Kwiatkowski, is she here, by the way? Is Karen here? Oh, right, hi Karen, way back. Was really going to the roots, which is what a radical does, when she went back to the time before presidents, to the Articles of Confederation. And the fall, she measures the fall from rejecting the Articles of Confederation. I don't know about that, actually, but I'm still grieving over the Constitution, which she regarded as part of the fall. As a matter of fact, hell, I'm nostalgic for the Magna Carta. Hey, habeas corpus. I mean, this president is not content with reversing the gains since 1775. He's going back to habeas corpus, wiping out 600-700 years of civil liberties. Well, the Bill of Rights. There has been progress since the Magna Carta, I would say. The Bill of Rights, remember that? The good old Fourth Amendment, which I suppose I couldn't have defined which one is the Fourth Amendment till reading in the paper how we'd lost it, basically. That's when you come to appreciate something. When warrantless surveillance, the federal judge in Detroit defines that in a judgment, which is now on appeal, on certain effects, defines what the president has been doing since September 2001, that's almost 6 years, as illegal under the FISA Act, under the Federal Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and unconstitutional under the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure warrant. And it's still going on under the Democrats, supposedly an opposition party, who swore they would make hearings on this. There has not, unless I missed something, been an open or closed hearing on what NSA is doing to listen to, as far as we know, everyone. The president says the program he wants to talk about, and the only thing he will let his subordinates testify about, Gonzalez and others, is a program that targets only terrorists. International calls, one of them being in the United States, to be sure, but one of them being outside, and one of them a known or suspected terrorist. But as revealed in Frontline Investigation, the television program a few weeks ago, which was very good, which you could still see on the web, that's untrue. Now, even from the beginning, one could take that with a grain of salt from this particular president. And indeed, when Leahy in the Judiciary Committee asked Gonzales, well, under your understanding of the Constitution and the law, does the president have the right to open letters? And Gonzales said, not under the program I am testifying about. And Leahy said, well, are there other programs under which this might fall? And Gonzales said, I am here only to testify about this program, the one I've chosen to tell you about. And apparently lying about that one, if he knows. Maybe he doesn't know. But the television program's investigators were able to find out, yes, they are overhearing conversations that are wholly within the United States. And suspicion turns out to be an interesting concept, or it has evolved into something new under this administration, openly. The idea of the Fourth Amendment is no warrant shall be issued without probable cause. By the way, Gonzales read that clause and says, actually, there's no guarantee of warrant in the Constitution. It doesn't say that. It just says no warrant shall be issued, and you can't search. So in his, what Justice Ginsburg might call a cramped reading, he wasn't sure that the Constitution did assure a role for the judiciary in surveillance. But anyway, it's been going on. Gonzales has refused to talk about it until this day. And that's a little familiar to me because it arose in the last weeks of my trial. I was in court. I was under indictment for 2 years, but the final, and in trial almost twice, but the last 4.5 months in court, in the last couple of weeks of that, I learned that I had been subject to warrantless wiretaps. And what made that especially interesting was not just that they were warrantless, because in those days it wasn't as clear-cut as it came to be later by the Supreme Court and by the FISA Act, that was illegal. It was a questionable area. But because the FBI had been so, had frequently in the court testified to the judge that I had not been overheard at all. Not just once, but several times. And suddenly it turned out I had been overheard. So they, on a warrantless wiretap of an NSC aide, by the way, Morton Halperin, with the tap continuing long after he left the NSC. So, and with no suspicion of disloyalty to the country on his part, but the possibility that he was critical of his boss, Henry Kissinger. They didn't even find that on the tap. And if they talked to him, I think they could have discovered that. But the FBI was worried enough that this might be considered unconstitutional that they demanded that it be authorized by the president through Henry Kissinger, and then the records were kept out of the FBI records. So when my judge asked, okay, let's see the records and see if it tainted the trial or not, the then acting director of FBI, the former one having just been, Gray, had to withdraw his nomination because of obstruction of justice committed in connection with me, among other things. So Ruckelshaus, who had now discovered this wiretap, then said, we can't find the records. There are no records. And this was the proximate cause, the immediate cause of the judge asking us if we wanted to rule for dismissal. At this point, we've been having revelations like that for 2 weeks, one a day. And that was kind of the straw that broke the back. It turned out that the records were in the White House. They had been stolen from J. Edgar Hoover's private safe, where he was using them as a lever against the White House, all the illegal actions he did for the White House to stay in office. They'd been stolen from his safe by Sullivan, his number 2 man, and given to the White House, to Ehrlichman in the White House, so that Hoover could not use those records to blackmail Nixon into keeping him on and this. But anyway, that was not discovered till a day after my trial was ended. And in fact, the day my trial ended, that day, the headline in the LA Times was, John Mitchell indicted. He was the one who had indicted me. initially. And then he was indicted for crimes. Then Kleindienst had had to cop a plea.